Hey there everybody, Andrea Maranville here, Sweet Life of a Baker. It's no secret that I like to make good food. I like to make fancy food sometimes. Sometimes I like to make crock pot meal, have it be super easy for the day. Sometimes I like to do a one pot meal on the stove, and then sometimes I like to make something a little over the top. Good food that may seem over the top as far as being difficult is not always the case. Good food with good ingredients can make a great dish, and it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. I'm going to show you a really easy way to make a seafood bouillabaisse stuffed in a acorn squash with sweet potato and maybe some corn. I haven't decided yet. Years ago, you know how when you have a meal and you can taste it years later? For me, I have maybe 5, and this is one of those dishes that I tasted from one of my favorite chefs probably a decade ago, and to this day I'm trying to recreate it because it was that good. So it's no secret that I like to make good food. I think it's good anyway. But when I like something and I taste something, I want to keep eating it. So I want to show you healthy does not need to mean boring. Healthy does not need to mean to be routine. Healthy can be delicious, it can be gourmet, whatever you want to call it. I'm just a home cook. I've learned from myself and I've learned watching other chefs, but everything that you're seeing here, you know, there may be better techniques for what I'm making, which is a seafood bouillabaisse. Another version or another word of that is basically fish stew or a seafood stew. So what I have in my stock pot right now is 1 medium onion and about a half a bulb of fennel. Now fennel, I just kept the tops of this so you can see it. Fennel comes like with a big bulb underneath, and it comes with, looks almost like dill on top, but it's not. Sorry, I'm not going to pick that back up. And it has a very distinct flavor and smell, very similar to a licorice. So I only used a little bit just to add a tiny bit of flavor because I don't want to overpower the dish with this flavor. Some people love it. My husband's not too keen on it, so I only used a little bit. And then I might garnish the bowl with these fancy little sprouts on top. I haven't quite gotten that far yet either. So I have in here 1 onion, I have 1 fennel. Now all I'm doing is I'm sauteing these down with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And if they're cooked down, they're sauteed down pretty well. I'm going to add in about 2 tablespoons of chopped garlic, diced garlic. Add some nice garlic flavor. I have half a teaspoon of salt. I have a half teaspoon of thyme. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, and I have about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I'm going to throw that right in as well. Now, this is going to be the base of your broth that's going to hold all of your seafood. I have 3 seafood items that I picked up at the store today. Oh, this smells great. That I picked up at the store today. I had no intention of making this dish today. I was actually going to the store to buy shrimp because that's on my meal plan for the week, and I didn't have any, and I had every intention of making a shrimp scampi tonight. But then I saw lobster was on sale at a really great price, and the bay scallops were at a really great price, and so I went ahead and I grabbed them. So I want to also tell you how much this whole thing cost because it's not super expensive. Sometimes people think seafood is going to be super expensive, and it's not. So I think oh, this is going to be great. Okay, so this is cooking down very nicely. I'm starting to get some great flavors. Now I'm going to do what's called deglaze. I guess that's what you call it. With 2 bay leaves and 3 cups of chicken stock. You could use white wine. You could use water. You could use a fish stock. You could use just about anything. I'm choosing to use chicken stock. I think it's going to give it a nice depth of flavor. It's not water. And that's going to be that. So I'm going to put this in. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. Let it cook a little bit. Let it kind of come to heat. There are so many classic ways to make this dish. I am probably screwing up the entire thing as far as culinary standards go, but it's going to taste good. Some recipes take all day to make this classic bouillabaisse dish. I am making this at 4:30 in the afternoon. Right now it's 4:30 and I'll be serving it here tonight for dinner. Kids won't eat this again. I'll make something separate for them. But sometimes I get an inspiration and it makes me think of that meal that I had 10 years ago and I'm making it. So I'm going to do that. I have a can of diced tomatoes, organic diced tomatoes. You could use any can of diced tomatoes. And I'm going to throw this in here also. The whole, the juice, everything. It's going to make a nice broth. Turn this up a little bit. I have no butter in here. I have no cream. I'm also going to put a little bit of saffron in here, just a tiny bit, in a little bit, to get it a nice flavor as well. I'm going to cook this up. Actually, hold on, let me get the top. Get this nice and heated up. Now, what I went ahead and I did was I diced up one whole sweet potato, and I already boiled it down. So what I did was I diced up into a pretty medium to small chunk of the sweet potato, and I cooked them just like you would do a boiled potato for mashed potato. It doesn't take as long because the smaller your squares are, or the smaller you dice a potato or a sweet potato, the shorter amount of time it cooks. I didn't want them to be mush. I want them to have a tiny bit of bite, but they're pretty well cooked. So I boiled these down, I drained the water, and I'm just setting it aside because this is going to go into this. But I don't want to put it in now because it's going to deteriorate and fall apart. So I just want to go through the other three items I have here. Now, one thing you may not know about me is that in my former career, I worked at a seafood and produce company. So I learned a heck of a lot about produce and seafood. So when I go to the store and I see something, I know what I'm looking for. Scallops, for example, this is 1 cup of bay scallops. Scallops come in all different sizes. These are called bay scallops, okay? And these are very small. You can get varying sizes of scallops all the way up to, I think, U3s or U4s. And they are 3 or 4 to a pound. So as you can imagine, they're very large, but you only get 3 for your pound. So this is a ½ pound. So 1 cup of bay scallops gives me a lot. So this is 1 cup of bay scallops. I've got it right here, and I'm going to throw this in the stock when it's ready to be cooked. These are raw, so these are going to cook into the broth, and it's going to make some more flavor as well. This costs about $4. So then I went and I bought a ½ pound of raw shrimp, and I chunked them up because you don't need to have an entire shrimp in the sauce. You can cut them up into small pieces. These are raw also. I cut them up into probably 1-inch cubes or whatever you want to call it, and these will be a nice bite as well. Again, flavoring the broth, and when you do that, you can buy larger shrimp and not as many of them because you're cutting them up. So if you could buy a gazillion of the really, really tiny shrimps, or you could buy a few really good quality bigger shrimp and chunk them up. Again, this is 1 cup. So I've got 2 cups of seafood right here. Then lobster was on sale for $6 a pound. So I went and bought it's called a chick lobster, which is 1 pound. And I've already cooked it, and I've already cut up the tail. In the knuckles, you can see here, I've got the lobster meat, probably about a ½ cup here. And I have the claws here. All right, I've already taken 1 claw out, and I'll use this as a garnish on top, so I'm not going to chunk up this part. One thing about these lobsters, I started to take this off already, and I'll finish it, is that when lobsters are very inexpensive, usually it's because they're called what's called soft shell. Soft shell simply means the lobster has molted and is growing into a larger shell, so it's not full-bodied meat, say, in this claw. So you look at the claw and you see the size of it, but when when it's soft shell, you can put your thumb right through it. You can break the shell. A hard shell lobster, you can't do that with. So a soft shell lobster, on the other hand, you can. But now you're going to see that when you take the meat out of a claw of a soft shell lobster, it is much smaller than the shell. A hard shell lobster would be full-bodied in the shell. So eventually this lobster will grow and it'll become a hard shell, full-bodied lobster. But this is a soft shell. That's why sometimes they're less expensive. And some people like the soft shell or firm shell lobsters better because they think the flavor's sweeter than the hard shells. It's really a personal preference. Either way, lobster's lobster, and it's going to be delicious. So these I'm going to set aside, and those are going to be for a garnish, but they're still going to be really yummy. And I am going to check my broth here real quick. All right. Oh, that smells delicious. Just delicious. I'm going to let this cook down and take the lid off so it kind of cooks down a little bit. Gets a little thicker. I'll just set this aside. And I'm going to come back in a minute and see where we're at, all right? All right, guys, I am back. This stew, or bouillabaisse, however you want to call it, has been cooking down now for about 10 to 15 minutes. It is starting to smell amazing. It is starting to get a little bit thicker. It is just delicious. I'm going to give it a little bit of a taste, see how it's doing. Let's make sure it has enough seasoning. And then I'm going to get ready to add the seafood. That's amazing. There's a little bit of cayenne pepper in there, like I mentioned. It gives it just a little bit of heat, which is going to be awesome, and it's going to counteract very nicely with the creaminess of the sweet potato. So I'm going to put this cover right back on again. Just want to show you how I roast my acorn squash and what exactly it is when I say I'm going to stuff this into the acorn squash. So let me just show you what's going on here in the oven. What I have done is I have taken one full acorn squash and I sliced it right down the middle in half. I cored out the center of it, very similar to how you would core out a pumpkin or how you would core out a melon or something. It has seeds and a little bit of stuff on the inside. And what I did, and I haven't put any olive oil, I have not done anything except for turn them upside down and put them on the baking dish. Now these are getting pretty cooked pretty well. So let me just see how they're looking so you can see what they look like. Perfect. These are going to look delicious. Now you can see it's steaming pretty good. This is going to get nice and soft and tender. This is going to be the bowl or the vessel that is going to hold all of the stew and all of the broth, and it's going to overflow, and you're going to scoop it out and eat this along with the seafood and the broth, and I'm going to put it into a much larger bowl so that it captures the broth. So this is going to be awesome. These are pretty much cooked, so I'm going to put these back in the oven, and I am going to just turn the oven off because these are good to go. Well, honey, I'm cooking. All right? Yeah, in a little bit, bud. We're going to have dinner here real soon. All right, so hold on one second. I'm going to go see if I can get him occupied with a book or TV or something. Hang on. There, I just had to occupy him for a few minutes. He just went back upstairs. So I'm going to take this bouillabaisse and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start putting everything into it because this is pretty much good to go. The longer you cook this stew or bouillabaisse, the thicker it's going to get, okay, and the more stew-like it's going to get, depending on how thin or thick you like your broth. All right, let me go ahead. I'm going to take the shrimp. I'm just going to throw it right in. I'm going to take the scallops, dump it right in. I'm going to hold off on the lobster because it's already cooked, and I don't want to overcook it. So if you overcook it, it's going to get rubbery, and it doesn't need to be, that will just need to be heated up. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to put the cover on and so that the seafood cooks really nicely. And then I'll come back. Probably about 10 minutes, all right? Maybe 5 to 7. All right, I am back. So the seafood has been cooking in here for probably about 5 minutes now. I'm just going to give it a check to see how it does. Oh, and it looks great. You know, the shrimp, you know when cooked shrimp, it's got that, you can tell it's done, it's got that pink and white. It's not translucent any longer. Okay, I'm shaking. So that's how you know it's done. And the bay scallops start to pucker and start to come apart a little bit. That looks delicious. Let me give it a little bit more taste. Awesome. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to take the sweet potato. I think I have 1, 2, 3, I think 4 cups worth of diced sweet potatoes in here. 1 full sweet potato is what I use for this dish. Now, I want to talk again about the price for this dish because I think it's important. This is going to serve, we could eat all of this in one sitting. It serves about 2 people as far as the 21-day fixed food portions go. This is a lot of food. So I don't think we're going to eat this all in one portion, but this could last a lot longer than one meal. And so in here I have the 1 sweet potato. That's it. And I have the fennel, and I have 1 onion, and the seasonings. So when you add up the lobsters that were on sale for $6, I made sure that they gave me a chick 1-pound lobster because sometimes they'll measure it out and it becomes 1.5 pounds. And if you're using it for something like this and you want a small lobster, you don't want to pay more for a larger lobster. So make sure you get what you ask for. Go up to the seafood department and say, I don't want a full pound of shrimp, I would like a 1/2 pound of shrimp or a 1/4 pound of shrimp. You can tailor this to your budget. So you may want to make a much larger stock pot of this for more people. Tailor it to your budget. But so for example, I paid the $6.25, whatever it was, for my lobster. I paid $4 for my shrimp, and I paid $4.50 for my scallops, or it might have been reversed, I'm not really sure. So I've got 6, 10, 14. Now, I did buy the sweet potato. That was 15. That brings it up to $15. And everything else I had at home. So if you have to go out and buy an onion, it might be a little bit more expensive. If you have to buy the seasonings, it might be a little more expensive. If you have to buy the fennel, which you don't even have to have fennel. You don't have to have some of these seasonings. You could tailor this recipe according to your taste buds. So if you don't like fennel and don't want to use it, you don't have to. If you don't want to use cayenne pepper, you don't have to. If you don't want to use saffron, oh, I forgot to put the saffron in. That's not good. So I'm going to take a tiny pinch of saffron. They look like little threads. See if I don't know if you can see it. They look like little threads. It's a rather expensive herb. I don't really buy it very often, but I did buy it and I have it and I'm going to use it. I'm not using a lot. I'm just putting a couple strands in. See how it flavors it. All right. So, but I guess the point is that you could make a seafood chowder for rather inexpensive. The other thing is I have bay leaves in here. I have 2 bay leaves. You don't eat them. You take them out. So when you're done flavoring your broth, actually I'm going to leave it in because we're not going to serve this right away. Let it flavor a little bit more. Take the bay leaves right out. So how am I going to serve this dish? Okay, because it's obviously a broth and it's thin. So I have a bowl here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the acorn, I'm going to set it right in the center of the dish. I'm going to take a slotted spoon so that I capture all of the goodness, all the yummy goodness. So I'm going to capture, not the liquid, but I'm going to capture, I'll just show you real quick. I'm going to capture all of the seafood. I'm going to capture all of the vegetables. And I'm going to literally ladle it into the squash so that it's heaping on top. Then I'm going to take another ladle and I'm going to pour the soup or the broth into the base of the dish and ladle it over, and then garnish the top with one of the lobster claws and possibly some of the sprigs of this fennel. And that's it. It's a great dish. I know I've been talking a long time now, but I hope you like this dish. I hope you give it a try on a night that you maybe have a little bit more time. It's going to be a yummy one. I promise you're going to love it if you love seafood. And 21-day fixers, before I forget, this entire dish is 2 cups of yellows. I'm sorry, excuse me, 2 yellows per serving. So this entire pot is going to be 4 yellows. This entire pot is going to be 1 purple. This entire pot is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 red. And this entire pot is going to be probably 2 green between the onion and the fennel. Okay, so that's what this recipe entails. This is all 21-day fix. And you'll have a few teaspoons of the of gray in here also for the olive oil. I have no butter, I have no cream. This is a healthy dish. The sweet potatoes are considered a yellow on the fix, and the vegetable is going to be the acorn squash and the onions and the fennel together. So that's going to be 2 green, all combined. All right, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoyed the recipe. If you have any questions on this, please let me know. I would love to hear your feedback. If you like watching this video and you think other people might like it, please share it, pin it to Pinterest, save it to your board. Definitely this is one to keep. So, Andrea Maranville, Sweet Life of a Baker, I hope you are living a deliciously healthy life. All right, thanks. Bye, guys.